The message came through the emergency channels at exactly midnight Galactic Standard Time. Every listening station across 300 star systems heard it. The voice was filled with pure terror, shaking and breaking as it spoke. "This is the Valori homeworld. We need help. Please, anyone who can hear this, we are under attack. The humans have arrived. The humans are here. Help us." Ambassador Telos sat in his chamber on the council station, his crystalline body flickering with confusion. He had served the Galactic Council for 200 years. He had heard many distress calls in that time, but this one made no sense to him at all. The humans? The small pink creatures from that dangerous little rock called Earth. They had only discovered faster than light travel 3 cycles ago. The council had voted to ignore them. They were primitive. They were unimportant. They lived on a world so deadly that most species could not survive there for even one day. Telos pulled up the records on humanity. He read through the basic information. Humans came from a world with crushing gravity. Their planet had massive storms, earthquakes, and floods. It was filled with predators that had teeth and claws. The air itself was so rich with oxygen that it made everything burn easily. The humans had evolved to survive all of this. They had become something the galaxy rarely saw. They had become Deathworlders, but they were still primitive. They had no fleet. They had no empire. Why would the Valori be afraid of them? Telos sent a message to the council leaders. Something strange was happening on the Valori homeworld, and they needed to understand what it was. Far across the galaxy, the UNC Relentless Hope dropped out of hyperspace. The ship was not large by galactic standards. It was only 300 meters long, built from gray metal and covered with weapon systems. But it was fast. It was tough. And its crew was something special. Captain David Park stood on the bridge, looking at the main screen. He was a tall man with short black hair and calm eyes. He had served in the United Nations Space Command for 20 years. He had seen combat on 3 different worlds. But this mission was different from anything he had done before. Earth Command had received a secret message from the Valori 3 weeks ago. The gentle crystalline beings had reached out to humanity in desperation. The Korath Empire had been raiding their world for months. The slavers came in their ships, took their people, and sold them across the galaxy. The Valori had begged the Galactic Council for help. The Council had done nothing, so they had reached out to the humans instead. David had read the reports about the Valori. They were peaceful beings made of living crystal. They could not fight. They could not run. They could only watch as the Korath took everything from them. When David had finished reading, he had volunteered for this mission immediately. His entire crew had done the same. "Captain, we have visual on the Valori homeworld," said Lieutenant Rachel Kim. She sat at the tactical station, her fingers moving quickly across her controls. Rachel was small but fierce. She had flown combat missions since she was 22 years old. There was no pilot in the fleet who could match her skills. David looked at the screen. The Valori world was beautiful. It was covered in crystal forests and silver oceans. But surrounding it was something ugly. Korath warships. David counted them quickly. There were 40 ships, each one bristling with weapons. They hung over the planet like hungry wolves waiting to feed. "Report on enemy forces," David said. Rachel pulled up the data. 40 Korath vessels, sir. Mix of destroyers and cruisers. They have orbital bombardment capability. I am also detecting landing craft on the surface. They are collecting prisoners. David felt his jaw tighten. Prisoners. That was what the Korath called the people they took. Not slaves. Prisoners. As if they were doing the galaxy a favor. "Where is Sergeant Cho?" David asked. "Marine Bay, sir. The wolves are ready for deployment." David nodded. Brian Cho was the best Marine commander he had ever served with. The man was built like a tank and fought like a demon. His unit, called the Wolves, had never lost a ground engagement. If anyone could save the Valori on the surface, it was Brian and his people. The door to the bridge opened and Dr. Grace Song walked in. She was the ship's chief medical officer, a woman with gentle hands and a heart made of pure steel. Grace had volunteered for this mission because she had seen pictures of what the Korath did to their slaves. She had cried that night. Then she had packed her medical kit and reported for duty. "Medical bay is ready, Captain," Grace said. "We have supplies for treating Valori biology. Whatever happens down there, we can help them." David looked at his crew. Rachel at tactical, ready to fight. Grace with her medical supplies, ready to heal. Brian in the Marine Bay, ready to kill. These were his people. These were humanity's best. "All hands, this is the captain," David said into the ship's communication system. "We are about to engage a hostile fleet that outnumbers us 40 to 1. The beings on that planet below us are counting on us to save them. They have never met humans before. They only know what the galaxy has told them about us. That we are dangerous. That we are predators. That we come from a world of death." He paused, looking at the Korath ships on the screen. "Today, we show them what that really means. Today, we show them that the galaxy's deadliest predators have come to protect them. All hands to battle stations. We did not come this far to watch." The relentless hope turned toward the Korath fleet. Its weapons powered up, glowing with deadly energy. The engines roared as Rachel pushed them to full speed. On the Valori homeworld below, the people looked up at the sky. They saw the single human ship charging toward 40 enemy vessels. They did not understand what they were seeing. No species in the galaxy would attack such odds. It was suicide. It was madness. But the humans did not stop. They did not slow down. They flew straight into the heart of the enemy formation, and they opened fire. The Valori had called for help, expecting no one to answer. They had sent their message into the darkness, hoping for a miracle. The miracle had arrived. It was 300 meters long, made of gray metal, and crewed by Deathworlders. And it was very, very angry. The Korath commander watched his screens with growing confusion. The small human ship was not behaving the way ships were supposed to behave. It was moving too fast. It was turning too sharply. It was doing things that should have killed everyone inside it. "Target that vessel and destroy it," the commander ordered. His voice was calm. He had destroyed hundreds of ships in his long career. This one would be no different. His weapons officers fired. Plasma bolts streaked through space toward the human ship. They should have hit. They should have burned through the hull and killed everyone aboard. But the human ship moved. It twisted and rolled and spun in ways that made no sense. The plasma bolts missed by meters. Inside the relentless hope, Rachel Kim was smiling. She pushed the ship through another turn, pulling 12 times the normal gravity. Her body pressed hard against her seat. Her vision went gray at the edges. But she did not slow down. She had trained for this. Her body had evolved for this. She was human, and humans were built different. "Returning fire," she said calmly. The ship's weapons spoke. Railguns sent metal slugs screaming through space at incredible speeds. Missiles launched from hidden tubes, tracking their targets with cold precision. The first Korath destroyer exploded in a ball of fire. Then the second. Then the third. The Korath commander felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt fear. "All ships, focus fire on that vessel. Destroy it now." But Rachel was already moving. She flew the relentless hope through the enemy formation, like a dancer moving through a crowd. She used the Korath ships against each other, making them hit their own allies when they tried to shoot at her. She was not just fighting. She was playing with them, On the surface of the Valori homeworld, a different kind of battle was beginning. Drop pods fell from the sky like metal rain. They hit the ground hard, digging craters into the crystal soil. The doors blew open, and the humans came out. Sergeant Brian Cho was the first one on the ground. He was a big man with thick muscles and hard eyes. He carried a rifle in his hands and a knife on his belt. Behind him came 50 Marines, all of them trained killers, all of them ready to fight. The Chorus slave camp was just ahead. Brian could see the cages where they kept the Valori prisoners. He could see the guards standing around, laughing and eating. They had no idea what was coming for them. "Wolves," Brian said quietly. "Time to hunt." The Marines moved like shadows. They had trained in worse conditions than this. They had fought on worlds with poison air and crushing gravity. They had survived things that would have killed any other species in the galaxy. This was easy. This was fun. The first Karth guard died without making a sound. Brian came up behind him and put his knife through the gap in his armor. The creature fell, and Brian was already moving to the next one. The other Marines spread out, doing the same thing. Guard after guard fell. The Korath did not even have time to raise an alarm. By the time the camp commander realized something was wrong, half his guards were already dead. "Intruders!" the commander screamed. "We are under attack." He turned and saw Brian Cho standing in front of him. The Korath commander was 8 feet tall. He had armored skin and claws that could cut through metal. He had killed hundreds of enemies in his life. He was not afraid of anything. He charged at Brian, swinging his claws in a deadly arc. Brian stepped to the side. He grabbed the Korath's arm as it passed him. He twisted his body, using the creature's own weight against it. The Korath commander flew through the air and crashed into 2 of his own warriors, knocking them all to the ground. The other Korath froze. They had never seen anything like this. The human was half the size of their commander. He should not have been able to do that. It was not possible, but it was possible, because humans came from Earth, and Earth did not make weak creatures. Brian pulled out his rifle and started firing. His Marines joined him, their weapons cutting down the Korath warriors like grass before a blade. The slavers tried to fight back, but they were too slow, too weak, too soft. In 5 minutes, it was over. Every Korath in the camp was dead or dying. The Valori prisoners sat in their cages, staring at their saviors with eyes full of shock. Brian walked to the cages and broke the locks with his bare hands. The Valori flinched away from him, terrified of this creature that had destroyed their captors so easily. "It's okay," Brian said, his voice soft now. "You're safe. We're here to help you." A young Valori named Crystal Dawn looked up at him. She was beautiful in the way that all Valori were beautiful, her body made of living crystal that caught the light. But her eyes were full of confusion. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you help us? You are predators. You could take our world for yourselves. You could make us your slaves instead. Why save us?" Brian knelt down so he could look at her face to face. He thought about her question carefully. It was a good question. The galaxy had taught these people that the strong always hurt the weak. That was how things worked everywhere else. But not on Earth, never on Earth. "Where I come from," Brian said slowly, "the strong protect the weak. That's what makes us human." Crystal Dawn did not understand. She had never heard of such a thing. But she looked into Brian's eyes and saw something there. Something warm. Something kind. Something that made her believe, for the first time in her life, that maybe the universe was not as cruel as she had always thought. Behind them, Dr. Grace Song was already setting up her medical station. She worked quickly, treating the wounded Valori with gentle hands. Some of them had been hurt badly by the Korath. Grace did not rest. She did not complain. She just kept working hour after hour, saving lives that the galaxy had forgotten. One Valori elder watched her work. He saw her lift a piece of heavy equipment that would have taken 3 of his people to move. He saw her operate for 6 hours straight without taking a break. He saw her cry when she lost a patient, and then wipe her tears away and move on to the next one. "What are you?" he asked her finally. Grace looked up at him with tired eyes. She thought about the question. She thought about Earth, with its storms and earthquakes and predators. She thought about her ancestors, who had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. She thought about everything humanity had overcome to reach the stars. "We are Deathworlders," she said simply, "and we chose to use our strength to heal instead of hurt. That is our gift to the galaxy." Above them, in the darkness of space, the battle continued. The Korath fleet was burning. The humans had won, and the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every world heard the story. Every species learned what had happened at the Valori homeworld. A single human ship had attacked 40 Korath vessels and won. Human soldiers had landed on the surface and destroyed an entire slave camp in minutes. The Korath Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for 300 years, had been beaten by creatures they had never even heard of. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from 100 species gathered in the Great Chamber, their voices loud with fear and confusion. Nothing like this had ever happened before. The balance of power had shifted overnight, and no one knew what it meant. Ambassador Telos stood at the center of the chamber, his crystalline body glowing with nervous light. He had spent the last 3 days studying everything the galaxy knew about humans. What he had found terrified him more than anything he had ever learned. "My fellow council members," Telos began, his voice echoing through the vast room, "I have completed my analysis of the human species. What I am about to tell you will be difficult to hear, but you must understand what we are dealing with." He activated the display screens around the chamber. Images of Earth appeared, showing its blue oceans and green forests. It looked peaceful. It looked beautiful. But Telos knew better. "This is the human homeworld," he said. "They call it Earth. The name means dirt in their language. They named their planet after dirt, and they consider it beautiful." Murmurs of confusion spread through the chamber. What kind of species named their world after dirt? "Earth has a gravity 1.5 times the galactic average," Telos continued. "Its atmosphere contains 21% oxygen, making it highly flammable. The planet experiences constant extreme weather, including storms that can level entire cities. It has earthquakes that reshape the land and volcanic eruptions that block out the sun." The images changed, showing Earth's wildlife. Creatures with sharp teeth and deadly claws filled the screens. Sharks swimming through dark water. Lions hunting across golden grass. Bears standing on their back legs, towering over everything around them. "Every ecosystem on Earth contains apex predators," Telos said. "The humans evolved alongside these creatures. They did not avoid them. They did not hide from them. They hunted them. They ate them. They wore their skins as clothing." Several council members made sounds of disgust. The idea of wearing another creature's skin was horrible to most species. "But that is not the most important thing about humans," Telos said. "The most important thing is this." A new image appeared on the screens. It showed a human running, then another human lifting heavy weights, then another human swimming through freezing water. "Humans do not stop," Telos said, his voice growing quiet with fear. "Their bodies produce chemicals that allow them to keep moving even when injured. They can track prey for days without rest. They heal from wounds that would kill other species. They survive diseases that should destroy them. They are not the fastest species. They are not the strongest species. But they are the species that never, ever gives up. The chamber fell silent. Every representative was thinking the same thing. If these creatures decided to make war on the galaxy, how could anyone stop them? A voice spoke from the back of the chamber. It was the Korath ambassador, his massive form trembling with rage. "We must destroy them," he said. "We must gather our fleets and wipe them out before they spread further. They are a threat to every civilized species in the galaxy." Several council members nodded in agreement. The humans were too dangerous. They had to be eliminated. But then another voice spoke. It was quiet and gentle, like crystal bells ringing in the wind. Everyone turned to look. The Valori representative was standing up. This was strange. The Valori never spoke in council meetings. They were too peaceful, too quiet, too afraid. "I would like to address the council," the Valori said. Telos nodded, surprised. "You have the floor, representative." The Valori walked slowly to the center of the chamber. Her body glowed with soft blue light, and her eyes held a calm strength that no one had ever seen in her species before. "My name is Crystal Dawn," she said. 3 weeks ago, I was a prisoner in a Korath slave camp. I watched my people die. I watched my family suffer. I called for help, but no one answered. The Galactic Council did nothing. You sat in this chamber and debated while my world burned." She turned to look at the Korath ambassador, and there was no fear in her eyes. Then the humans came. They did not ask for payment. They did not ask for territory. They did not ask for anything at all. They simply came because we needed help. They fought for us. They bled for us. They died for us. Crystal Dawn looked around the chamber at all the representatives watching her. "You call them dangerous. You call them predators. You say they should be destroyed. But let me ask you this. Why have any of you done what they did? Why have any of you risked your lives to save strangers? When have any of you shown courage like that?" The chamber was completely silent. "The humans are Deathworlders," Crystal Dawn continued. "They come from a world of nightmares. They have strength and speed and endurance that we can barely imagine. But they chose, against all logic, to use that power to protect the weak. They chose to be heroes instead of monsters. And you want to destroy them for that?" She shook her head slowly. "I say no. I say we welcome them. I say we learn from them. Because if this galaxy had more species like the humans, maybe the Korath would never have been able to hurt us in the first place." The Korath ambassador slammed his fist on his desk. "This is foolishness. These creatures are a threat to everything we have built." "No," Crystal Dawn said softly. "They are a threat to everything you have built. And I think that is exactly what the galaxy needs." Far away on the bridge of the Relentless Hope, Captain David Park was reading a message from Earth Command. More distress calls had come in. The Korath Empire had been raiding dozens of worlds. Innocent species were suffering while the Galactic Council did nothing. Earth Command wanted to know if David and his crew could respond. David looked at his people. They were tired. They had been fighting for weeks. They were far from home, surrounded by a galaxy that feared them. "What do you think?" he asked. Rachel Kim smiled. "I think we have work to do." Brian Cho cracked his knuckles. "The wolves are always ready to hunt." Grace Song nodded quietly. "There are people out there who need our help." David turned back to the screen. He thought about what it meant to be human. He thought about all the stories his grandmother had told him when he was young. Stories about heroes who fought against impossible odds. Stories about people who stood up for what was right, even when it cost them everything. "Send the reply," David said. "Tell them we are on our way." The Relentless Hope turned toward the stars. There was a galaxy full of people who needed help, and the humans were coming. 6 months passed. In that time, the Relentless Hope became the most famous ship in the galaxy. Stories about its crew spread from world to world, growing bigger with each telling. Some species said the humans were angels sent from heaven. Others said they were demons from the deepest pits of space. Everyone agreed on one thing. When the humans arrived, the bad times ended. Captain David Park lost count of how many battles they fought. There was the rescue at Thorn Prime, where they saved 3,000 prisoners from a Korath mining colony. There was the defense of the Murithi crystal fields, where Rachel Kim flew the ship through an asteroid storm to escape a fleet of 50 enemy vessels. There was the Battle of the Ghost Nebula, where Brian Cho and his Marines held a bridge for 18 hours against an army of Korath warriors. Each victory added to the legend. Each battle taught the galaxy something new about humanity. On a world called Frozen Heart, the humans fought in temperatures that would have killed any other species. The air was so cold that metal became brittle and shattered. The Korath soldiers wore special suits to survive. The humans just put on heavier coats and kept fighting. Brian Cho led his Marines through the ice fields, hunting down the slavers who had been taking the local people. His breath formed clouds in the freezing air, but his body kept making heat. His heart kept pumping hot blood. He was a furnace wrapped in skin, and the cold could not stop him. The Korath commander on that world made a mistake. He thought the humans would wait until morning to attack. He thought they would need to rest, like every other species in the galaxy. He was wrong. The humans attacked at midnight. They came out of the darkness like ghosts, moving silently through the frozen landscape. By the time the sun rose, every Korath soldier on the planet was dead, and the slaves were free. On another world, the atmosphere was toxic to most species. The air was filled with gases that burned the lungs and ate through flesh. The Korath had built a prison there, knowing that no one could possibly mount a rescue. Grace Song figured out a solution. Human lungs could survive the gas for short periods if they held their breath. It would hurt. It would cause damage. But it was possible. Brian Cho looked at his Marines and explained the plan. They would have 90 seconds to get from their drop pods to the prison. 90 seconds without breathing in air that would kill them. 90 seconds to fight through whatever guards stood in their way. Every single Marine volunteered. They hit the ground running. The Korath guards never saw them coming. The humans moved like lightning, their bodies burning with the need for oxygen, but refusing to stop. They reached the prison in 83 seconds. They killed every guard in 12 more. When they finally took a breath of clean air from their emergency tanks, some of them coughed up blood, but the prisoners were free. 300 innocent beings walked out of that prison because humans were willing to hurt themselves to save strangers. Grace Song was waiting at the landing zone. She treated the Marines for their injuries, scolding them gently even as she worked to heal the damage to their lungs. Brian Cho just smiled at her. "Worth it," he said, his voice rough from the toxic air. Grace shook her head, but she was smiling too. "You are all crazy. We're human," Brian replied. Same thing. Across the galaxy, the Korath Empire watched their power crumble. World after world was liberated. Fleet after fleet was destroyed. The humans were everywhere, appearing where they were least expected. Fighting battles they should have lost, winning victories that should have been impossible. Emperor Krath, the Unbroken, sat on his throne, his massive body trembling with rage. He had ruled the Korath for 200 years. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had made the galaxy fear his name. And now these small, pink, soft-looking creatures were taking everything away from him. He called his generals to the throne room. They came with their heads bowed, afraid of their emperor's anger. "How many ships do we have?" Krath demanded. 3,000, my lord. It is the largest fleet in our history. And how many warriors? 1 million, my lord. Every able fighter in the Empire. Krath smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Good. We will end this human problem once and for all. We will show the galaxy what happens when you challenge the Korath. He pulled up a star map and pointed to a small blue dot on the edge of human space. This is the human colony of New Sol. 50,000. Civilians, farmers, families, children. His smile grew wider. We will burn it to ash. We will kill every human there and send their bones back to Earth as a message. We will teach these Deathworlders that the Korath Empire does not lose. The generals nodded eagerly. This was a plan they could understand. This was the Korath way. If your enemy was too strong, you attacked their weak points. You hurt the things they loved. You made them suffer. 1 week later, intelligence reports reached Earth Command. 3,000 Korath warships were converging on New Sol. 1 million warriors were preparing for landing. The largest military force in galactic history was about to descend on a colony of farmers. Evacuation was impossible. The Korath would arrive in 6 days. There was no way to move 50,000 people in that time. Earth Command sent what they could. 12 ships, 700 Marines, a handful of support vessels, against 3,000 warships and 1 million soldiers. David Park read the orders in his ready room. Rachel Kim and Brian Cho sat across from him, their faces grim. Not great odds, Rachel said quietly. David nodded. He thought about the people on New Sol, farmers who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars, families who had dreamed of a better future, children who had never known anything but peace. He thought about what would happen if the Korath won. The burning, the killing, the message it would send to every species that had started to hope humans might save them. No, David agreed. Not great odds. Brian Cho leaned forward. What's the plan, Captain? David was silent for a long moment. Then he looked up at his friends, his family, his crew. We go. We fight. We show them what Deathworlders can do when you threaten our home. Rachel's smile, that fierce smile of hers. That's what I wanted to hear. Brian stood up, already heading for the door. I'll get the wolves ready. It's time for the biggest hunt of our lives. The relentless hope turned toward New Sol. 11 other ships formed up behind it. Together, they flew toward the coming storm. On New Sol, the colonists looked up at the sky and waited. They knew what was coming. They knew they might all die, but they also knew the humans were coming. And if there was one thing the galaxy had learned in the past 6 months, it was this. When humans came to fight, miracles happened. Ships from every corner of the galaxy gathered at the edge of the New Sol system. They came to watch, not to fight. Representatives from dozens of species floated in their vessels, recording everything. They believed they were about to witness the end of humanity. They wanted to see the Deathworlders die. The Korath fleet arrived first. 3,000 warships darkened the stars around New Sol. Each ship was bristling with weapons. Each ship carried hundreds of warriors ready to kill. Emperor Krath himself sat on his flagship, watching his forces gather with cold satisfaction. Then the human ships appeared. 12 vessels against 3,000. 700 Marines against 1 million warriors. The watching aliens made sounds of pity. This was not a battle. This was an execution. David Park stood on the bridge of the Relentless Hope, looking at the enemy fleet filling his screens. He had faced bad odds before. He had fought battles that seemed impossible. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Rachel Kim sat at her station, fingers dancing across the controls. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. She had accepted whatever was about to happen. All she cared about now was making sure the Korath remembered this day forever. All ships reporting ready, Captain, she said. David nodded. He opened a channel to the other human vessels. 11 captains looked back at him from their bridges. Some were young. Some were old. All of them were ready to die. "Today we fight for New Soul," David said. "Today we fight for every human who ever dreamed of reaching the stars. Today we show the galaxy what it means to be from Earth." He paused, looking at each face on his screen. "We might not win. We might not survive. But we will make them bleed. We will make them remember. And we will give our people on that planet below a chance. That's all we can do. That's all we've ever done." The captains nodded one by one. No one spoke. There was nothing else to say. David closed the channel and turned to Rachel. "Take us in." The 12 human ships did not form a defensive line. They did not try to protect themselves. They accelerated to full speed and flew straight into the heart of the Karth formation. They attacked. Emperor Krath watched his screens with disbelief. What were these creatures doing? Did they not understand they were already dead? Did they not see that resistance was pointless? The first Karth ship exploded. Then another. Then another. The human vessels tore through the fleet like wolves through a herd of sheep. They fired constantly, never slowing down, never stopping. Where they passed, Karth ships died. But there were so many enemies. The human ships took damage. Their shields failed. Their hulls cracked. One by one, they began to fall. The UNSC Bright Star was the first to go. Its captain rammed his burning ship into a Karth carrier, destroying both vessels in a ball of fire. The UNSC Mountain Home followed, its crew fighting until the last moment before their reactor went critical and took 6 enemy ships with them. On the surface of New Seoul, Brian Cho had organized the defense. Every colonist who could hold a weapon stood ready. Farmers with rifles. Teachers with pistols. Even children old enough to reload stood beside their parents. They watched the drop pods falling from the sky like black rain. The Korath landed in waves. Thousands of warriors poured out of their pods, their weapons ready, their orders clear. Kill everything human. Burn everything they had built. Leave nothing alive. Brian met them at the edge of the colony with his wolves and 300 armed colonists. They were outnumbered 100 to 1. It did not matter. "This is our home," Brian shouted to his people. "They want to take it from us. What do we say? No." The colonists screamed back. "What do we say? No." The first wave of Karth crashed into their defensive line. The fighting was brutal and close. Humans fell. Korath fell. Blood from both species soaked into the soil of New Seoul, but the humans did not break. They did not run. They fought with a fury that the Karth had never seen. For every human that fell, 10 Korath died. For every position they lost, they took back 2. Grace Sung had turned the colony hospital into a fortress. She worked without stopping, treating wounds, saving lives, keeping people alive long enough to get back into the fight. When Karth warriors broke through the doors, she picked up a fallen rifle and shot them herself. Then she went back to healing. In space, the battle reached its peak. Only 4 human ships were left. The Relentless Hope was burning, its hull torn open in a dozen places. Half its crew was dead, but it was still fighting. Rachel Kim saw her moment. The Korath flagship was directly ahead, separated from the rest of the fleet by the chaos of battle. Emperor Krath was on that ship. "Captain," she said, "I have a shot at their flagship." David looked at the screens. They had no weapons left. Their shields were gone. Their engines were failing. There was only one option. "Do it," he said. Rachel pushed the engines to maximum. The Relentless Hope screamed forward, trailing fire and debris. The Karth flagship tried to turn away, but it was too slow. Too big. Too confident. The human ship hit the flagship at full speed. The impact tore through both vessels like paper. Metal and fire and death exploded outward in a wave of destruction. but Rachel Kim was still alive. Somehow, impossibly, she had survived the crash. She pulled herself from the wreckage, bleeding from a dozen wounds, and started moving toward the Korath Bridge. She had a pistol in one hand and a knife in the other. She found Emperor Krath trying to escape. The massive Korath Emperor turned to face her, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You should be dead," he said. Rachel smiled, blood running down her face. "I'm human. We don't do what we should do." She raised her pistol and shot him twice in the chest. The Emperor of the Korath fell to the ground, his reign ending at the hands of a small human woman who refused to die when the Korath fleet saw their Emperor's flagship destroyed and their leader killed. They broke. Ships scattered in every direction, abandoning the battle, fleeing for their lives. The million warriors on the ground tried to retreat to their drop pods. Most of them never made it. The watching aliens could not believe what they had seen. 12 ships had defeated 3,000. 700 Marines had stopped 1,000,000 warriors. The humans had won. On New Sol, the colonists emerged from their defensive positions. They were bloody and tired, and many of their friends were dead. But they were alive. Their home was safe. Brian Cho stood in the center of the colony, looking up at the sky. Grace Song came to stand beside him, her medical coat covered in blood that was not her own. "We did it," she said softly. Brian nodded. "Yeah, we did." 3 months later, a delegation from the Galactic Council arrived on Earth. They came to negotiate, expecting demands. Expecting the humans to claim new territories, to ask for tribute, to begin building their own empire. Instead, David Park met them with a simple message. "We don't want your worlds. We don't want your resources. We just want to be good neighbors. And good neighbors help each other." Crystal Dawn, who had come with the delegation, watched David speak. She remembered the day the humans had saved her people. She remembered asking Brian Cho why they had helped strangers. She finally understood the answer. 1 year after the battle, a monument was built on the Valori homeworld. It showed 4 humans standing together. David Park, Rachel Kim, Brian Cho, Grace Song. Below them, an inscription in 1,000 languages. "They came when we called. They fought when we could not. They are the Deathworlders, and they chose to be our protectors." On Earth, David read about the monument in the news. He shook his head, embarrassed by the attention. "We just did what anyone would do," he said. Rachel, sitting beside him in their small apartment, laughed. "That's the point, Captain. That's exactly the point." She looked out the window at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. Somewhere out there, new distress calls were being sent. Somewhere out there, innocent people needed help. "Ready for another mission?" she asked. David smiled. "Always." The message spread across the galaxy. When darkness came, when hope was lost, when all seemed to be ending, there was always something you could do. Send the signal. Send the call. Earth would answer. Earth would always answer. Because that was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to be a Deathworlder who chose to protect instead of destroy. And that made all the difference in the universe.